Welcome to my review of the Casio G-Shock DW-8600, also known as the Fisherman. Now, a lot of you have probably heard of some of the man G-Shocks, but maybe not the Fisherman. You might have heard of Rangeman, Gulfman, Mudman, etc. But for a few years, back in the late 90s, there was the Fisherman. It debuted in July of 1996. And it wasn't as successful as some of the other man watches like Mudman, Frogman, Gulfman, Riseman. But it was noteworthy because for the first time in a G-Shock, you had the moon phase and tide graph display, as well as moon data and tide graph modes. Moon and tide modes. Yeah, that's really what is the significant thing about the Fisherman. It's kind of the forgotten G-Shock, the forgotten man series from back in the 90s. 1996, some other noteworthy things were this came out in July, like I said, and a month previous in June, the much beloved DW-8600C, which had a stainless steel case and a stainless steel screwback, was discontinued. And it was replaced with the DW-5600E, which is a cheap, affordable G-Shock. It's very popular. It still sells well today. It's what a lot of people think of when they think of G-Shock. It has the classic DW-5000 look to it. And another thing was the Mr. G came out, the MRG. When it debuted, it had a titanium case with resin over it. But a few months later, they came out with an almost all-steel version of the Mr. G, the MRG 100 and MRG 110. Yeah, and a lot of G-Shocks had a strange buckle that came out in 1996. I guess those were the most noteworthy things. I'm sure there's something I missed, but anyway, this version that you see here is DW-8600ZJ-1T. This was part of the first Men in Color series. It started out with Men in Black. This came out in October of 1997, and the following year you had Men in Smoke, and then there's, off and on, Casio's been releasing Men in Color series ever since. Now, the name Fisherman isn't exactly really catchy, and I think that's why the watch didn't do so well. So in 1999, the Fisherman was phased out. It was essentially just renamed as the Gulfman. So if you purchase a Gulfman G-Shocks aren't exactly that popular nowadays either. But if you purchase a Gulfman, you're basically purchasing a Fisherman. It's the same design philosophy, which is to give it titanium metal parts so that it's resistant to salt corrosion. So it's meant to be worn out on the high seas, in a saltwater environment. Yeah, so the Gulfman came out in May of 1999. I guess probably the most collectible version of the Fisherman would be the iCirc Dolphin and Whale, which was released in May of 1998. Now, the Men in Black here is also collectible because it's, one of the first, it was the first Men in Color series, one of 5 pieces which were released as the Men in Black ensemble. And that included the Frogman, the Riseman, and this Fisherman that you see here. And 2 versions of Mudman. A lot of people don't realize that back in 98, there were actually 2 versions of the Mudman. There was a digital version, the DW-8400, and there was also an analog version. It was the AW-570. So the Men in Black analog Mudman which would certainly be a rare collectible piece, was the AW-570Z. The following year, there was the Men in Smoke collection, which also included another AW-570 analog Mudman. And after that, there were no more analog Mudman G-Shocks. Ever since then, it's been strictly digital. So what you'll find nowadays that you may be familiar with is the Mud Master. So let's give this Fisherman a quick function and features breakdown. It has a single temperature sensor. So it measures temperature. You've got a little graphic display here to show you the temperature. It's kind of hard to read. The shadowy part going up to almost 30 here is what indicates the... Yeah, that shadowy part, they're actually tiny little slivers of LCD that illuminate and show approximately what the temperature is. You can also press the temperature button here, and it'll show you the temperature, digital 24.8 Celsius right now. And it goes back to showing the month and day. And it, of course, it's got the titanium metal parts, as I mentioned earlier, to make it saltwater friendly, saltwater safe. Titanium buckle, case back, and screw pins. It's 200 meter water resist or 20 atmosphere, standard G-Shock water resistance. It has low temperature LCD, so that just means that if the watch gets cold down to about -4 Fahrenheit or -20 Celsius, the display will keep showing the time instead of getting really like molasses slow or blanking out altogether, as often happens with most digital watches in the cold. If it's on your wrist, you know, your wrist will keep it warm anyway with most digital watches, you know, unless you're dead, then you'll have a problem. The temperature measurement function is good for -20 or -4 Fahrenheit up to 60 Celsius or 140 Fahrenheit. It has a moon and tide mode. It's the first mode you come to. It shows you the moon up time and the moon down time, or rise and set times. The moon age here. If you press the adjust button, it shows the tide, and you can select what time of day using the two right side buttons. You can go earlier or later in the day to find out, you know, when the low tide's going to be, or high tide, etc. Pressing the mode button again goes back to the home screen. If you use a mode, it automatically just goes back to home screen when you press the mode button. So this is moon and tide mode again. And the next mode, the second mode, is sunrise sunset. Shows you sunrise time, sunset time, and you can change what day of the month. You can scroll backwards and forwards to, you know, back in time or forward in time to see what the sunrise and sunset times are going to be. It's really slow calculating. It's no range man. You know, the computer was pretty slow back then. This is a single hourly alarm, or daily alarm, I should say. And it shows the current time here, and this is what the alarm is set for. And you can use the light button to, that's alarm on, chime on, both alarm and chime, and then everything is shut off. So it's, as a chime, it gives a double beep at the top of the hour, like most G-Shocks do. Then the final mode is stopwatch. It does not have a countdown timer. So the final mode is just a standard Casio stopwatch. You can start and stop elapsed time and reset with the light button. You can also press the temp button to start it, then hit the light button to do a split or lap. And then you can do as many of these if you want. The stopwatch keeps running in the background. And you can also do first and second place finishes. the way that works is you start the stopwatch like normal, and then when first place finish, you press the light button. Second place finish, you press the temp button, and then you see the first place finish here. Then when you press the reset or light button, it shows you the second place finish, and then next time you press it, zeroes it out. So pretty basic. Everybody's pretty well familiar with how the standard Casio, it's the same with most other digital watches too, as far as how the stopwatch goes, how it works. It has a full auto calendar, which is pre-programmed until the year 2039. As you can see, it's showing military time here, so you can switch between 12-hour format or 24-hour format. It has a bluish-green backlight with afterglow, which just means that when you release the button, it keeps glowing for about 1.5 seconds. And it has standard Casio quartz accuracy, plus or minus 15 seconds a month. The battery life is about 2 years. And yeah, I guess that's it. Probably the coolest thing is the mermaid in the case back and the mermaid in the backlight, which I'll have to show here coming up. The mermaid in the backlight was just for this limited version Men in Black Fisherman. If you have a standard plain vanilla Fisherman, it probably won't have that mermaid in the backlight. So let's look at the illumination here. Yeah, I think it needs a new battery. That's really weak. Okay, so it's several days later now. I got a new battery in here. I had a little trouble figuring out how to reset it. If you remove the battery, put a new one in, it's just completely dead until you do an all clear. And so I had to locate the all clear pad, which was a little more adventuresome than I expected compared to most G-Shocks. So this is the backlight. As you can see, there's a mermaid there. It does not have an auto feature. That didn't come out until the next year, I believe, in the surfing G-Shocks. So it does have afterglow, so if you press the button, it stays lit for about 1.5 seconds, and then it automatically shuts off. And it doesn't matter whether you keep holding the button or release the button. Oh, I guess it does matter. Oh, that's interesting. Yeah, so if you keep holding the button, it'll stay lit. That's they kind of did away with that later on, I guess. But yeah, so you can keep it lit if you hold the button down. So that's pretty much all you need to know about the G-Shock Fisherman. Like I mentioned earlier, it debuted in July of 1996. It was in production for 3 years, 96, 97, and 98. And then in 1999, it became the G-Shock Gulfman. It is a 4-button G-Shock, as also the Gulfman is. It does not have a front-facing light button, so that, in my opinion, that takes it down a notch, or a half a notch. I do prefer the front-facing light button, unless it's tough solar, in which case I don't care, because then you can activate the full auto EL, and you don't have to press any button, and you just tilt it towards your face and it automatically lights up. Yeah, for military use, you don't want the full auto EL. You probably would prefer a front-facing light button. So if you really need a mermaid in your life, the Fisherman has the mermaid on the back plate there. And if you get one of the limited versions like this Men in Black version here, it also has a mermaid in the backlight. So there's that for, and collectability. It's the first, part of the first Men in Black or Men in Color series. It debuted in 1997. But let's say you don't really care to have a fisherman, but you like that design philosophy of the, saltwater resistant, anti-corrosion titanium metal parts. So you can wear it if you're regularly exposed to salt water for whatever reason. Then there's the Gulfman. Basically the fisherman continues to live on in the form of the Gulfman down to the present day. You can pick up a G-9100, which is a simple, plain battery-powered version. And then there's also the Solar Atomic GW-9110. Both of these remain in production and are available, Amazon, eBay, the usual places. Yeah, that's pretty much it. 4-button G-Shock, the first G-Shock with the moon phase and digraph indicator. It's got the anti-corrosion titanium metal parts for use in saltwater environments. It's got low temperature LCD. It's a single sensor with a temperature sensor, and that's kind of the design philosophy. To be used by saltwater fishermen or anybody that's works in the sea, works in the ocean environment. So I guess I'll wrap this up. I hope you enjoyed this video, and thanks for watching, and thanks for liking and subscribing if you do, and I'll see you in the next video.